Right guys, this is going to be a different type of video. For those that just want to skip to the parts that they want to hear, I'll just timestamp the video so that like doing it in sort of steps. And this video is going to be mainly focused on how I believe that Nightfalls are no longer Pinnacle endgame content in Destiny 2. And that's why I've got Destiny 1 loaded up to kind of compare D2 to D1 in that respect. I'll also discuss kind of how farming was in D1 via the Heroic Strike playlist compared to D2. And also how the Nightfall had its own sort of system of farmable loot. And now D2 is bare bones on that and doesn't, and relies on world drops within their Nightfall loot to kind of compensate, but it doesn't really work. And also just kind of tying it all up in the end of how Nightfalls are basically watered down with the previous versions, and a lot of it's opinion, but a lot of it's factual as well. Like, I'm not saying my opinion is fact, but a lot of the points I'm making, some of it's based from facts, but a lot of it, some of it's opinion as well, right? But it's only from experience. So first I'll talk about why I don't regard Nightfalls in Destiny 2 to be Pinnacle endgame content. Reason being for that is that in D1, right? So D1 and D2 are the same in the way that they layer content. Okay, so even though there's milestones in D2 and there wasn't in D1, whatever, the way content is layered is the same. So you had, I would say, lower tier content was the likes of your campaign story missions. Okay, so going through the campaign, leveling up, and then you had like your strikes while you're doing the campaign. So I guess that's all lower tier content. So that's just getting you leveled up, getting you ready for endgame, basically. And I would say middle tier content is when you're approaching max light, and you're starting to get more powerful, and you're starting to step into activities that are a little more difficult than just a story mission. So, likes of these, I would like the Strike Heroic story missions. Sorry, the Strike Heroic playlist I regard as middle tier content, not Pinnacle endgame content. Just middle tier. The reason why I say that is because there's matchmaking involved. Whenever Bungie involves matchmaking into an activity, they don't regard that as Pinnacle endgame content. Take for example in Destiny 2, Menagerie came out, they had matchmaking for it for the normal version, but for the heroic version they didn't. So they basically are saying Heroic Menagerie is endgame Pinnacle content, and I would agree with it that it is, because it's 770 light. There's nothing else in the game that's 770 light. So yeah, it's endgame Pinnacle content because there's no there's no matchmaking, and it's a lot harder than anything else, right? So it is, and the normal version isn't. But it's good they've done that because people can still experience it a little bit on normal at least. So that's how they decipher it. So there is matchmaking for this. However, in D1, including D2 as well, there isn't matchmaking for the weekly Nightfall. So in Destiny 1, they regard the weekly Nightfall as Pinnacle endgame content, since you can go in there solo and requires a team for you to get a team if you want to go in there with a team. It's the same in Destiny 2, there's no matchmaking in it, but at this point, with the way Nightfalls are in Destiny 2, they may as well just have matchmaking in it. If this is how they want Nightfalls to be as they are right now, in September, they may as well just say, okay, here's matchmaking. But at that point, they may as well not even have a Nightfall, because I'm going to show you how Nightfalls in Destiny 2 are the equivalent of a strike in Destiny 1. That's how far it's regressed. So take this Heroic Strike mission, right? The playlist, sorry. So it's got on Heroic. So more enemies appear and they're more aggressive. They're AI. We've got Solar Burn on. It's not a singe. So a burn does more than a singe. Drastically a lot more. Then you got Berserk on. And then Brawler. So say you got put on to Shield Brothers. You know, it's going to be harder than your average strike, because solar burns on, everything's doing solar, berserks on stuff. So this, I would basically say, even though in day one it's just a strike, I would say that this would be harder to solo. If I was to go ahead and change my settings and try to solo this, which I could do, it would take longer to solo this heroic strike than it would to do a D2 Nightfall. But Bungie regard Nightfalls as endgame content, yet an heroic strike in D1 is harder than a D2 Nightfall. Because in a D2 Nightfall you would literally have a 0 handicap. You would have on a singe, not a burn, because you can't put burns on it. It'd be a singe, so it's less impactful, therefore less engaging. Then you would have heavyweight, grenadier or brawler on, more than likely heavyweight on to one cycle the boss, one phase him, even solo as well. And then you'd have momentum here to get OP health regen so that you can run past everything, speedrun the Nightfall, 3 minutes 30 seconds, boom, you're done, get your loot, get out, go and do something else. So in that sense it's just a milestone, little milestone. Not endgame Pinnacle content, even though there's no matchmaking for it. So they're confused on I think they're expecting people to go into a Nightfall, put on max handicap and farm for score. People aren't going to do that stuff because A, it's going to require a lot of work for little reward, right? And B, we have the power to put on what modifiers. In D1 we didn't have power, okay? It's a set Nightfall, so it happens to be Sepic's Prime, I believe, this week for D1. And the modifiers are set, so it's Epic, Arc Burn, not Singe, like I said, Specialist, Juggler, and Airborne, right? There's modifiers that you've got to think about more in this Nightfall than you would in D2, because we know all the modifiers, because we have access to them at all times. D1, you didn't. So if Specialist didn't come around for a bit, you're like, oh, Specialist, that increases my special weapon damage, but my primary and heavy weapon suffers because special weapon is favoured, which makes it an interesting modifier. So maybe you might forget about that, or maybe you might forget about any other sort of, like there's another modifier called Fresh Troops, you might forget what that does. Whereas in D2 we have access to them all the time. Not all of the modifiers, but the Nightfall modifiers, because we have the card to play around with. So that's another thing where in D2 they kind of give us the power, but what they don't realise is that most Destiny players are going to go from A to B as quickly as possible. They're going to find the fastest way, which the fastest way would just be to put on momentum, heavyweight, a singe, boom, one cycle the boss run past all the ads, and that defeats the objective of what a Nightfall's meant to be. Like in original Day 1, Nightfall Vanilla was meant to be the hardest Pinnacle endgame content bar a raid. So you had Nightfall then raid, you know. Nightfall was kind of below it, but raid would be top because it's 6 man, you know. But Nightfall, maybe Pinnacle endgame content for solo players. It was their endgame content to try and do, and they were hard. They were a lot harder than D2s. So that's basically how it was in D1 compared to D2. In D2, the things that there's 2 ways of going about it. I'm going to basically detail all the secret modifiers in D2 because I'm not saying that they're secret, it's just that they're underutilized. So in D2 it's kind of weird with their modifiers, so they have different modifiers going on at all at different times for different playlists. So first of all, the daily heroic missions that they have, the playlist, that basically rotates with the daily rotation modifiers, which are in line with the strikes, menageries on the same line of rotation, and stuff like that. So they're all going to, and the daily heroic missions as well, the ones on the planet, they're all going together at once, right? Whereas Reckoning doesn't follow the same route and it has different modifiers. It also has a modifier called Prism. Prism used to be on D2 Nightfalls, but they removed it. For whatever reason, they removed it. It's one of the best modifiers in the game because it makes you think, and it's an impactful modifier, right? So, and it's burns. It's the only iteration of Destiny 2 where we actually have burns and not singes. It's more than what a singe is. So that's what they're kind of doing with that. In terms of the modifiers that they don't have in the game anywhere apart from Heroic Adventures, all these modifiers that I'm going to list should be in the Nightfall playlist, and to be honest with you, they should take all the modifiers available in Destiny 2, put them all into one thing, and then put them all on the same rotation maybe, or just make them all available, at least for the Nightfall, at least for the Nightfall. So these modifiers are, which are only in heroic adventures, but like I say, can be utilised in Nightfalls. So we've got one called Depowered. Kinetic and energy weapons do more damage and precision damage, but they decrease your grenade damage. So this modifier is interesting, and I'd like to see it on the Nightfall card. Depends on how much the buff is. I have no idea on the numbers of it. I don't go in heroic adventures to know that, but they need to have these sort of modifiers in there, I think. Next one, Elite Soldier. So power weapons and kinetic weapons deal more damage and reload quicker, but your super recharges slower. So this could be a good modifier. Only problem I have is that power weapons getting buffed. If it's like heavyweight, it's no good. Heavyweight's 100% damage buff. It means that one cycle on bosses is easy. That's no good. So I would just say reduce. Depends on what the buff is on it. It might not be the same as heavyweight, but if it was, just tone it down so that it's like a singe buff. And that would be fair enough. And if your supercharge is really slow, it means you're more tactical with your super. It means you're gonna use it when you really need it, not use it as soon as you get it. Elementalist, which is like Specialist from D1, but not as hard. So basically, energy weapon damage is increased, grenades deal more damage and recharge quicker, and melee damage is decreased. So this is like Specialist, but added on with Grenadier. Too powerful in my eyes. They should just make this modifier, bring it to the Nightfall card, and just call it Specialist and have it work like Specialist. So your energy weapon does more damage. Don't have the Grenadier on it, just have it so that your kinetic weapon and your heavy weapon does less, just like D1. And then we have Risk and Reward. So super melee and grenades deal more damage but recharge more slowly. So same again, that's a great modifier. It means you're tactically using your super more often. Well, not using it more often, but having to think about it. That's what a modifier is meant to do. It's meant to make you think in the game how to play around it. Then we have Brawler, so faster melee recharge and health regen, increased power weapon damage, slower super recharge. So this is called Brawler. We already have Brawler on the Nightfall card, so there's 2 Brawlers in this game. So I don't know what they could do with that. I mean, to be honest with you, it's got increased power weapon damage on it. Again, how much by? I don't know how much it is by, but if it's heavyweight buff, no, it's no good. You have to be less than that if they brought it in the card. Justice from Above, so this is another one. Increased jump velocity and airborne acceleration. Your super recharges faster and deals more damage. Melee recharges slower and deals less damage. So this modifier is just hitting you with a lot of stuff at once, and this modifier would enable you to play the game differently. So just having a modifier with a different aspect of the game is always good, so I would include that as well. And the last one, From the Shadows. Increased running and crouching speed. Melee recharges faster and deals more damage. Grenades recharge slower. As long as like the grenade recharge is really slow and not just a little bit slow, then I think that will be a good modifier, because it's helping you to be agility based in Destiny, which that's one of the best things, the movement. So it's even adding on to that. Plus your melee's coming up more. I think that would be fun on like a Titan. A Titan Skullfort might bypass this modifier. That's the only thing I would say. You're getting grenade energy back, but I think that modifier would be good as well to add. So basically, add all those modifiers that we have to the Nightfall card. I think that's what they could do. Do away with heavyweight and momentum. They're too OP. Heavyweight's 100% damage buff. That's too powerful. Replace it with Specialist or Elementalist or whatever they call it. Do away with momentum. It's the most OP health regen perk in the game. It's more OP than Devour. Devour even requires a kill to get your health regen. This just requires you to run past ads. So that's too powerful. It's bypassing a lot of the content that they've made in the game. So take that out. Either they do that, or they go to D1 style modifiers like we have here. So D1 style, they just do a random 1 Nightfall, not 3, just the 1. Do 1 Nightfall per week, and they add these sort of like pre-selected modifiers. I think they were on a rotation in D1. Just have them rotate, and then maybe 1 week come up with a super hard week and stuff, and they can have it like that. But what they need to realise is that if they do give us the power still in September with the Nightfall card, people are still going to make the card as easy as possible. They'll do that until the 100k or their score threshold changes, and they would need to change the score threshold so that it is worth to run it, actually worth to run it. Right now in D2, sorry, is that it's just an extra powerful engram drop. Like, as a solo player, big whoop, one extra drop, I'll just go and do a daily story mission and that'll give me my drop that I need. Or, you know, I'll just go and do a menagerie. So they need to make the it more rewarding to do a score run, you know, rather than it just being the way it is. So that's the sort of changes I think that they should make to the Nightfall to make it endgame Pinnacle content again. Like, there's two options: remove card, make it pre-selected modifiers. Also buff Nightfall bosses HP. Just buff it. Just give them a flat buff because they're not tanky enough. The D1 got knocked for that, for having bosses that are too tanky, but I think we can all agree that I think that will be better than what we've got right now in terms of the game just being too easy. Well, I don't know if everyone can agree on that, but that's my opinion on it anyway. Just having the bosses just so that you're having to fight the ads while you're fighting the boss. That was a key thing in D1. Like, imagine just in Arms Dealer or something, or any sort of strike where you're having to kill the ads while you're killing the boss. And because a lot of the times the ads, they're kind of based on the boss's HP. Just have the ads just all come at you while you're trying. That makes it far more interesting. And D1 was a lot more like that. I mean, it is in D2 in my eyes. And buff their HP, like I said. So that's basically the changes they need to make. So now going on to the system that they had in place in D1. So in D1 they had like a Nightfall system where you would go to Zavala and pick up some Nightfall bounties. These bounties also related to the Heroic Strike mission playlist as well. And there was a bounty called Sunrise which was linked to an exotic called Icebreaker. It was the only place you could get it in the game. This was like a great change that they should have done. This was a great change that they'd done at the time, should I say. So it made PvP players come in to try and farm an Icebreaker, even PvE players. So it just made everyone want to play the Nightfall each week, get their gold tier. It is one criticism that the gold tier was so easy in the Nightfalls. I mean, it wasn't so easy. It was easy though. They could have made it harder, but going forward in D2 they could do it and make the score, maybe incorporate the score to exotics. You get the score, make it a really hard score and tie it to the unknown rewards. So in D1 it was called unknown rewards. So basically that just meant a higher chance of exotics, or you could get an exotic. Have that sort of element tied to the score. So if you get your 100k, or maybe up it to 200, if you get your 200k score, you have a higher chance of getting exotics. That would be a good way of doing it. Also, with these bounties, as I showed you, they offered Nightfall exclusive armor drops. They were kind of revamped from year one. They were year one armor, but at least they had a different like look to them. They had a different like shaded thing on them. So each Titan, Hunter and Warlock had Nightfall Pacific gear. D2 doesn't have that. Why? That's my question. Why did they do away with that? Having Nightfall bounties was a good idea, and they don't have it in D2. So this is something else they should include, because it gives you a reason to go into the Nightfall, get your stuff done. Okay, it gives you a reason to do all that. D2 there is no reason. The only reason is to go on power level. Once you've power leveled, there's going to come a point to everybody where they've power leveled and they're max light. That means everything stops. D1 it didn't have it like that. You still had a reason to farm, which goes into the next thing. Okay, the Rogue Strike playlist. So in D1 there was always people farming the Strike playlist. Why would they do this? Mainly for skeleton keys. Not only that, you could get your skeleton keys free per week off the Nightfall, that was guaranteed, but the Strike playlist would also give you additional keys. This key system would mean that you could go into the base Strike level. So say you went to Devil's Lair level 8, you could go in there, open the chest and get the sniper, or any other drops that was within the chest, the strike loot. So it was a direct way to get the strike loot, which made it more rewarding for your time. So if you had 5 keys and you wanted a god roll Grasper Malak, what are you going to do? Right, fine. Let's load up Omni Gold Strike. Let's go there, get the god roll. Let's try to get a god roll. Use all my keys up. If I don't get it, then there's always next week. Or just go ahead and refarm strike playlist until we get the key again to then go and do it again. So it gives us a reason to do it. In D2, what reason is to go and farm the strike playlist? There isn't one. Not really. Yeah, you get tokens. In D1 you got reputation. Now some people have said the argument, well, it doesn't matter. Tokens are rep. Difference is you can stockpile 30-40k worth of tokens, and then you can hand in that sort of tokens. You can hand them in when you want. Now, granted, it won't level you up. It might, when you first start the season, it might level you up a little bit, you know, but it isn't going to level you up when at them high levels. But the thing is, a lot of times people will be farming for a god roll. So say you have a lot of Gunswift tokens, if you've got a lot for the next season, you can just hand them all in. Once something god roll comes out, like the Rentel or whatever, the fusion rifle, I bet a lot of people had a lot of tokens for that, just to say, oh, this has come out, go and farm it quickly, hand him all my tokens. Whereas with reputation, you can't do that. With reputation, you have to hand in your package. If you don't hand in your package, you don't get it. So there was no way of stockpiling for the next DLC. That helped that in that situation. So when you leveled up the Vanguard, you went to Zavala and he had you could pick strike or armor. You could pick, weapon or armor. So you had a lot of PvP players coming into this playlist. They would farm it for a god roll sniper. You know, maybe they wanted quick draw, hidden hand, ambush or short gaze or something. Just for the god roll sniper, just to take it into trials or elimination or any PvP playlist. So it gives people a reason to do it. Not only that, they had PvE players farming it for their own specific role that they were wanting. Not only that as well, you went in there, the more you went in, the longer you spent in this playlist, the more reputation you earned, making it more rewarding. So it was more of a farmable activity, and that's what it's meant to be. It's not meant to be anything else. It shouldn't be a thing where you go and level up at, as in when you're near max light. It should help you get to max light, like getting you up there, but then it should cap out at a certain point. There shouldn't be powerful engrams tied to it. Not in my eyes. So that's effectively the reasons why the Heroic Strike playlist worked in D1, not in D2. That's how they could change it, by doing away with tokens. This could apply to the rest of the game as well, in all areas. Just having not tokens but reputation. Even have it for planet vendors, whatever, but definitely better than the token system in my eyes. So that's all the reasons anyways for the Heroic Strike playlist and for the Nightfalls. Sorry that it's a long video, but that's effectively changes that Bungie need to make. If they don't, these playlists are just going to become more pointless as we go on. I think as well what doesn't help is the fact that there's no new strikes for each sort of drop. Reason being is because of that season pass thing. I mean, I think I like the older formula better, where it was DLC, where you got a couple of strikes, a couple of PvP maps, and a raid every time. Okay, you got it every 3 months. You got that. That's quite good. I mean, I think so. Better than this season pass thingy, where you know they add a new activity. I mean, yeah, Menagerie's been a success, but it's the only one that's been a success. Reckoning hasn't, and the Forges I would say haven't either. Not now. I could still see people playing Menagerie over those two, even though the nerf and the chest glitch, I could still see that. So yeah, that's another thing. DLC, I think, is better than the season pass model. That's just me saying that anyways. So anyways, hope you enjoyed it. If you disagree with any of my opinions, and just list it down, I'll read them, see what other people think. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.